Yo, what's up everybody? Jumping here, and today I'm back on some Anthem, and I want to talk about the Jareth's Wrath, which is a weapon that came out with the weapon packs, and this weapon is busted. This is probably the most overpowered thing that's ever been in the game, and there is of course a very high possibility that BioWare will actually patch this and fix it, because right now it's busted. Now if you don't know about this weapon, it's a really powerful weapon. It can prime targets, it does a lot of lightning damage. But what makes this busted is when you actually tap the trigger instead of holding the trigger. Now, normally you're just going to hold the trigger. It's going to do some good damage. But if you tap the trigger, it's going to blow through the ammo a lot quicker. But it's going to hit the target multiple times really quickly for a lot of damage that will add up to just be insane. Like, there's really nothing better than this right now. So when you're talking about all the different Javelin builds, none of them are honestly as good as just literally throwing this weapon on and making a build around this weapon for that Javelin. So today, I'm going to show this off, but also I'm going to show you all the different builds that you can do for all the different Javelins with this weapon. So, let's go ahead and get started. Now, I'm going to quickly talk about this Ranger build. This is a weapon build. This is going to make this weapon a lot stronger by using this weapon build. So I'm going to make this really quick because I'm going to be talking about all the Javelins. But the first thing that's really important is you want to use Grand Opening. This is a seeker grenade. It's really nice. You throw it, it seeks out the target. It's going to hit pretty much all the time. And when you hit enemies with this, it's going to give you a perk that's going to give you 110% weapon damage for 20 seconds. The recharge on this is 12 seconds. So even if you don't have multiple charges on it, it doesn't matter. You throw it out, it gives you the weapon damage, and you're good to go. Another thing about this setup, because this is using a weapon, your power level doesn't actually matter all that much. So of course you do want to have a legendary Jareth's Wrath if possible. But if you actually do have a Masterwork Grand Opening, you can use that because it's going to do the same thing. It's going to give you the weapon damage for 20 seconds. And your power level won't matter because most, if not all of your damage is going to be coming from the weapon. So that's something that's really nice. Now, another thing about the Seeker Grenade is that if you don't have multiple charges, you can also use the new support gear to give you extra charges if you do throw it out and then it doesn't hit anything. That does happen only when the weapon just kills everything so quick, because that will happen a lot, especially if you're playing on like Grandmaster 2. You'll run in and just everything dies so quickly that even if you throw the grenade out, there's a good chance it's not going to have the ability to hit anything because everything died so fast. Now, for my assault launcher, I am using a Seeker Missile. I'm using this because it has armor on it. It gives me some general damage. And honestly, it's kind of nice. It will allow me to detonate combos from further away if I want to. But also, I have the option to detonate combos with my melee, which is the Rampager. This will actually give me more damage, so I can stack it up to 5 times. It gives me 50% damage, and it's pretty good for that. But also, it lets me detonate combos. The only time I really detonate combos, though, with this is when I'm fighting against something a lot stronger, especially armor, because we're talking about lightning damage here. So when you're going against armor, it's not going to do as much damage against armor, but you can do some combos. And believe it or not, this weapon is so overpowered that even though it's doing less damage to armor, it's still going to kill them so quick. It's actually kind of crazy. Now for the components, the important ones in my opinion is Elemental Ops. This will allow you to apply acid to the target. This weapon's going to hit so fast when you're tapping the trigger, it's going to apply the acid almost instantly. So this is really nice for that. And also Victor's Resolve. This will increase your blast damage. This weapon has AoE to it, so it actually will benefit from blast damage. And this will give you a nice damage boost if you have this on. Now for everything else, I'm using Tip of the Spear for the combo damage and the healing. I'm using Vanguard's Badge for the melee damage. And of course giving my shields back when I melee. I'm using Soften Blows for when I lose my shields. This one I have is actually really good. It gives me general damage, it gives me elemental damage, which will actually benefit the weapon. So if you do have like a lot of elemental damage stuff, put that on for this weapon, it will benefit it. And then the final thing I'm using is rejuvenating ammo. It will heal me when I pick up ammo packs, but also this will give you reserve ammo, which can be a problem with this weapon because you're going to blow through the ammo really quickly. So having extra reserve ammo will definitely help you out a lot. Now for every single bit of gameplay you're going to see here, I'm going to be using the same consumables. I'm using 2 Vaultcaster sigils, and I'm also using a Lightning sigil. So I have the Epic Vaultcaster, I have the Rare Vaultcaster, and then of course the Epic Lightning sigil. So that's what I recommend using if you're going to use this weapon, and especially if you're going to use this setup. But now I'm going to go into free play on Grandmaster 3. I'm going to show off on how this works. And you're going to see this weapon is going to melt enemies. Alrighty guys, well I'm in free play, it's Grandmaster 3, and I'm going to be using this cave, which is what I always use to actually demonstrate stuff. But with the Ranger and this build, all you really have to do is just chuck the grenade, and then for 20 seconds you're going to get increased damage, and that's about it. Now, if you do come across something a little bit stronger, maybe armor, because this weapon's going to do less damage to armor, you can always do your melee and detonate some combos, which is nice. And also by doing your melee, you're going to get increased damage, which will actually benefit the weapon, which is actually kind of a cool thing that you can do with this. So, I definitely say that, you might want to melee here and there. But one reason I really like the Ranger build for this is because it's extremely tanky. Anytime you're taking some damage or you're about to die, just go ahead and melee. And because you're priming everything with acid, and you're priming everything with electricity, you're going to detonate combos. The combos are going to heal you. And they're also going to give you your shields back, so the build is extremely tanky. And that's one thing I absolutely love about it. But yeah, anytime that you actually lose your Seeker Grenade effect, just chuck it out again. And if you have to, go ahead and use your bubble. If you need to get extra charges, throw it. But as you can see, this thing absolutely melts everything. Now remember, you have to tap the trigger to make it melt enemies like this. But that's why the weapon is busted. Now I'm going to show you the Interceptor weapon build, which in my opinion isn't as good just because it's not as tanky. But it does do more damage with the weapon than this build, but this build can do some really powerful combos whenever you actually come across something with armor. So it's kind of a toss-up, but it is still a lot of fun to play. Now I'm sure someone's going to comment and ask which one of these builds are the best one to play with this weapon. It really doesn't matter. All of these builds are really good because the weapon is just busted. That is the truth. It's really up to personal preference on which one you might like or what you have the most stuff for. So I say play any one of them. It doesn't really matter. But I will say one thing, and that is the Interceptor is probably the most likely to die because most of his tankiness will come from his melee. And this really isn't a melee build, it's a weapon build. You can melee a little bit, but you're going to lose a lot of damage if you're meleeing compared to just shooting this amazing weapon. So, it's kind of up to you. Now, I will say one thing. There is something you can do to try to help you a little bit with the flimsiness of the Interceptor, and that is actually to use the Blades of Warding. These will actually give you damage resistance for meleeing. So, a lot of times if I'm taking some serious damage, I'll go ahead and melee a little bit to try to give me some damage resistance and help me stay alive. Also, of course, you do want to try to get shields and try to get armor. Go for that because it will definitely help you out big time. Now, for your support system, one of the nice things about the Interceptor is having the target beacon. You can affect everything with this. It's going to increase your damage by a lot. So this build does have this over the Ranger, which is great. Now, for your assault system, though, 100% you want to use Ruthless Stalker if you have it. I have one with a lot of damage and some charges. Once again, it's the same principle. 110% weapon damage when you hit something. It homes in so you don't have to aim it or anything like that. And it lasts for 20 seconds. It has a 14-second recharge. So if you hit something with this, it's going to come back before the effect will wear off. But if you do miss, you might want to have charges. That way you can throw it again and you can actually get the effect. And you can miss with this. I do it all the time. So keep that in mind. Now for the actual strike system, this is kind of up to you. I would probably recommend using the lightning kick because first of all, this can restore your armor and can help you stay alive. And also, it's actually really good. You hit something with this, they die, they explode, and everything around them will die. This is a very powerful attack. But I do have Viper's Bite on right now because it can apply acid, which is nice. Also, this has general damage, it has weapon damage. So, it's kind of up to you on which one you want to use. I would probably say go for the lightning kick though, because it makes the most sense. You're going to be boosting lightning damage on top of the fact that this is a very powerful move and it can heal you. Now for the components, I'm using Softened Blows, the same one as before. Vengeance Matrix, this is going to increase all damage by 50%. Elusive Talisman. If you dash, you can reload the weapon, which is cool, and it will increase your weapon damage by 25%. I'm using Conductive, which is going to increase electrical damage. Now, the thing about this is that I believe it's 20%. I could be wrong on that. It doesn't tell you on what the number is, but I believe it is 20% electric damage. Way of the Savage, this is going to increase the magazine size and the ammo drop rate. Now, if you can actually fit it on here, Rejuvenating Ammo is really good with this because you're going to get more ammo drops, and Rejuvenating Ammo is going to heal you. But when you collect ammo, it's going to increase your weapon damage by 40%, so that's really cool. And I'm using Survival Algorithm, but like I said, probably go for Rejuvenating Ammo. I'm using this though because it actually is such a great component for keeping me alive. It has so much armor because it had double luck on it at one point, so I have like 165% armor on this. Plus, I also do like the effect when you do have a status effect on you. When it wears off, you get 40% of your shields back, and this will allow you to go ahead and re-trigger Soften Blows. So I definitely do like it for that. But if you don't have a god roll like the one I have, just use Rejuvenating Ammo. It's going to be a lot better for you. Alrighty, well now I'm going to get into the gameplay. I'm going to go into the same cave on Grandmaster 3, and you can see on how the Interceptor works with this crazy weapon. Alrighty guys, now one thing I will say about the Interceptor as well is that the Interceptor requires a little bit more setup than like the Ranger, for example. Not only are you using your target beacon, you're throwing out your Ruthless Stalker, you're picking up ammo for Way the Savage. You know, there's a lot more setup to it, but I mean, it still is pretty simple. Another thing, of course, as well, when you're taking damage, you might want to melee a little bit to get some of that damage resistance. You can detonate some combos with that as well if you like. So, I mean, it's all good, but it just is a little bit more complicated than some of the other builds I'm showing here. I mean, the other builds are just pretty straightforward. Do this, do that, and go to town, and you're good. Interceptor, you kind of have to pay attention to your buffs and all that, and you have to like throw them out and be like, okay, I need a debuff, I need to rebuff myself. So in that way, it's a little bit more annoying. And remember, I do pretty much recommend the lightning kick, just because it can heal you as well, which can come in clutch, and whenever you kill stuff, when you prime them with that, they will just literally all die. And armor targets, you might struggle a little bit, but I also do like having Viper's Bite, because not only can I debuff them using my target beacon, I can also apply acid to them, and if I do that, now Viper's Bite isn't like that great for applying acid, but it will actually apply acid. But when you do that, you're doing like that double debuff, and they will just take so much damage from this weapon. Alrighty, so now I'm going to show off the Colossus build, which is actually kind of a hybrid build. It's not just using this weapon, it's also doing combos. And that build is quite insane. I'm going to be straight up with you, because the Colossus is always insane. Now I want to go ahead and talk about something real quick, and that is the new power scaling system, because this is important for the Colossus. So right now, the max power is 930. If you want to get the maximum amount of combo damage and ultimate damage, you want to be 930. But for the Colossus, you really only want to be 920, because to do this setup, you have to use old stuff. Now there's no point in becoming 925 or 915. I've done testing, and if you go from 910 to 915, your combo damage, your ultimate damage will not go up. But if you go from 910 to 920, your combo damage and ultimate damage will go up. Same with 925 and 930. If you go to 930, you'll see an increase, but at 925, you will not see an increase. So to achieve the 920 status, you will have to use two of the new weapons. Now, of course, we're using this OP one, but we actually have another one on here for the armor and the elemental damage, and it's actually a pretty good one. Now for the melee you want to use for this setup, you want to use the Meteor Smash to prime everything with fire. Now this one I have, it has armor on it, has weapon damage on it, but what you really want is a lot of weapon damage if you can get it. The Colossus melee build right now is absolutely insane. I'm probably going to try to make a video about it, but if you can get a Colossus melee with like some crazy damage, like 400%, I can only imagine on what you can do with your melee, because right now it hits so hard. Now let's go ahead and talk about the heavy assault launcher. For this, because this is a combo build, you want to use the Solvent Green. This will give you 200% more combo damage, which is insane. This one also has general damage on it, has weapon damage on it, which is nice for this weapon, but we're using it because of the combo damage that it gives us. For your ordnance launcher, now this is important, you want to use Voss's Arc. Now the reason you're using this is because this will detonate everything once you turn it on. So the strategy with this build is quite simple. You run into the group, you can melee it, set everything on fire, start shooting it with this weapon and tapping the trigger, priming everything with electricity. You turn this on, it's going to detonate everything, and everything is going to die. So definitely, this is amazing. Now when it comes to this, it has a really quick recharge, but I definitely think you want to have as many charges as possible, and also have a lot of gear recharge if possible, because if you have those two things, this thing's going to recharge a lot quicker, and you're going to be able to actually turn it on. It's a little bit annoying, and you have to get used to using it, but once you get used to using it, it is amazing. This build is insane. For the support gear, we are using Berserker's Cry because it is so good. 200% melee damage for you and everybody else. It is great. This one has combo damage on it. It has L1 recharge, which is nice for the Voss's Arc. And for the components, I'm using Catalytic Overdrive for the combo damage. Grand Entrance. This is nice because this will actually affect your debuff. Turn that on and it will debuff. It will make it last 15 seconds instead of actually lasting 10 seconds. If you have some support recharge, pretty much your Berserker's Cry is going to last, even with just one charge of Berserker's Cry. It will last as long as the 15 seconds. So that's a really cool thing. Once again, I have rejuvenating ammo on for the spare ammo. Also, it heals me. This one has combo damage on it because it's a combo build. We're using shock treatment. This is one of the most overpowered components in the entire game. It gives you 80% damage, and it's really easy to actually trigger this because all you have to do is take damage. So pretty much all the time you have 80% more damage. That's pretty good. We have Demolition's Tribute on. This is actually so insane for two reasons. First of all, when you actually hit something with your melee, if it dies, you get armor back. So, that's really good. But the main thing about Demolition Tribute is that what it will do is that if you have a melee with a lot of damage on it, try using your shield to melee. It is so crazy, man. I mean, that is where the melee build kind of comes in. Like, if you have Demolition Tribute on, it boosts your damage of your shield melees by 300%, plus with Berserker's Cry, that's boosting you by 200%. And if you have one that has like 400% weapon damage on it, your melees with your shield is going to hit for insane damage. I have one right now that has 250% melee damage on it, or well, weapon damage on it. But whenever I use that build, my melee build, and I have everything going, my melees are hitting for 350,000 with my shield. So I can only imagine if you have one with 400%, I'm assuming it would probably hit for 500,000 per melee. So, I mean, that is so ridiculous. Now, the final one I have on is Vanguard Emblem. This is going to increase your electrical damage and your fire damage by 35%. This is perfect because you want that for your fire melee. And, of course, you want that electrical damage for your OP weapon. So, this build is a lot of fun to play because not only is it going to use this amazing weapon, but it's also going to do a bunch of combos, and you are an absolute tank. Alrighty, well, here we go. And I'm just going to turn that on, and now it's going to shock everything. Now, the secret to Voss's Arc, honestly, is try turning it off before it gets to 5, and then just turn it back on, okay? So whenever you go in for your melee, it's going to detonate. And I don't even right now even have to shoot these enemies, honestly, but, you know, that is an option. You actually can double combo some stronger targets, and it's like, yep, melee, combo, shoot them, combo. It is amazing in that way. But I absolutely have always said that the Colossus is super overpowered, and some people sometimes will debate that. And I'm sorry, guys, like, the people who think that the Colossus isn't the most overpowered, I think they don't really play the Colossus because, I mean, look at this. He has everything. Like, they give him everything. Now, I'm not, like, a Colossus, you know, main. I'm actually a Ranger main. But I'm just saying, like, the Colossus is freaking amazing, man. It is so, so good. And being able to do stuff like this is just ridiculous, okay? Now, one thing about the Colossus, of course, though, I will say, is that the Colossus is slow, and I can see why some people might not like playing the Colossus because of the fact that, he's slow and sluggish and all this. But at the end of the day, he's got a debuff. I mean, literally, I can just go ahead and do this and debuff enemies, boost my melee damage by 200%. I have insane combos with this insane weapon. I mean, literally, the Colossus can melt pretty much anything. And remember, with this weapon, one of the weaknesses is when you have to face armor. It will still melt armor, no problem. It will destroy it, but it won't destroy it as fast as health. Well, with the Colossus, when you have your fire melee, you don't even have to worry about armor. You're going to do some really powerful combos because of your fire melee. And when you're doing double combos on it, plus your weapon's doing a lot of damage, you will melt armor, you'll melt health, shields. It makes no difference. Alrighty, so now we're going to go to the final build, which is going to be the Storm build, which might be my favorite one, to be quite honest. Now, the first thing I have to talk about when it comes to the Storm is what happened to Steam Vent, because they did actually nerf Steam Vent. Now, it's really sad because I made my Storm video and I was talking about Steam Vent in that video, and then pretty much the next day after recording that, they nerfed it. Now, BioWare has said that that was accidental and that they'll fix it, but to be honest with you, when it comes to Steam Vent, I always thought something was up with it because the numbers really never added up. It would do so much damage to enemies, and if you actually looked at the numbers, it kind of didn't make sense. But then again, who knows? Because there could have been a lot of invisible numbers of things hitting it. And maybe that's what happened. They just took away those invisible numbers that you can't see. So, like I said, it didn't make sense. And a lot of people also said the same thing. It's like, honestly, the numbers don't really add up, but it is hitting so hard. Who cares? And the thing is that Steam Vent really made the Storm great again. And I've been saying for the longest time that we need to make the Storm great again. Because the Storm really suffered there for a really long time where it was kind of the weakest javelin. And once they came out with Steam Vent and the new abilities, the Storm actually skyrocketed up to the top tier. It was so good. And now that Steam Vent has been nerfed, it's kind of going back down a little bit. And that's a shame. But if you're using this build with the weapon, oh my god. This is so much fun to play. And honestly, it's even better than the Steam Vent, I'll just be honest. But of course, they will eventually probably nerf this weapon. And they'll take away the whole tapping the trigger thing because, it is kind of an exploit. Now, I'm using Black Ice. I'm not using this because I think it's better than Steam Vent. If you want to use Steam Vent. That's perfectly fine. I'm just using it, and I'm recommending it because it can freeze enemies for you. So if you're dealing with something that's annoying, you can freeze it so it stops shooting you. And it stops moving, so I like it for that, and that's why I'm actually using Black Ice. Now for the other weapon I'm just using this Wyvern Bliss still. It gives me a lot of armor, it gives me elemental damage, which will buff my weapon, that's really great. Now for this build, because it's more of a weapon build, you can go for as much shields as you want. If you want to have a lot of shields, go for that. Normally, I recommend not going for shields because of Token of the Daring. If you're playing the Storm, you want to lose your shields so that you can actually get your abilities back and you can spam them better. But with this, we're not really using our abilities at all. We're just kind of shooting things. And because of that, you can go for as much shields as you like. It's not a problem. Now for the melee, I'm just using it for the stats. It gives me armor, it gives me shields, it's got gear recharge, it's got repair drop rate. Same with the support seal. I'm just using this for the stats. I don't really ever use it. But they did change this. It can now detonate, but it only detonates when it expires. It's pretty whack, I'm going to be honest. But I'm just using it for the stats, and that's pretty much it. Now for the blast seal, this is where it's very important. You want to use Ponder Infinity because this is going to increase your lightning damage while hovering by 165%. It is a huge buff, and it's going to make this weapon hit really hard. Now one of the things about this weapon though, is that this weapon will prime. And because of that, it's going to shock other nearby enemies. So when you're priming a group of enemies, and you're priming a lot of them, they're going to all start shocking each other. Now, because you have buffed your lightning damage by so much, that shock effect can get up to 25,000 a tick, and it ticks quick. So overall, your damage is really insane with this setup. And I definitely say that this setup is better than Steam Vent spamming because you will just murder everything, especially enemies in a group. And I probably would say this is my favorite one to play. Now for the components, I'm going full Storm tank mode here. I have Mark Clarity on, Vanguard's token, and Soften Blows. Vanguard's token and Soften Blows, when you combine them together, you become super tanky on your Storm. Because when you lose your shields, you become pretty much immune to damage. Because you have so much damage resistance. One of your only weaknesses, though, is actually elemental stuff like fire. If you're hit by fire, it can actually screw you up because your shields are not going to recharge. But with Mark of Clarity, you're going to get your health back from that. There's no like cooldown on this, so it's just like non-stop. It is really funny, but your Storm is so tanky. It's the holy trinity. If you combine these three together, you are so tanky. It is unbelievable. We're using Token of Daring, not because of the whole shield break thing. It is really good normally because it gives you all your charges back and you can spam your powers more. But it increases our elemental damage and we're using a lightning weapon. It makes sense. Same with Tome of Precision. When we kill something, it's going to give us 40% elemental damage. And finally, we're using Token of the Master because it will increase our blast damage. And remember, this weapon is AoE, and if you put blast damage on, it will actually increase the damage of the weapon. So now, I'm going to go ahead and go back to that cave, and you're going to see, man, this Storm is super ridiculous. And it's hard to tell if it's killing faster than the other ones, but I'm telling you, in a group, it absolutely does, just because it's priming enemies, and when it primes them, it shocks everything around it. It is so good because of that. Alrighty guys, well it's time to rain down death on these enemies. And that's one of the coolest things about this build. But I mean, the main thing with it though, is just the fact that not only does the weapon itself absolutely melt, but when you do get into a crowd and you start priming these guys, it gets nasty, okay? So I'm going to actually try to demonstrate this. I just need a group of enemies to spawn next to each other, and once they do, I'll go to them, and we can actually see the damage. So let me go ahead and just shoot these enemies, and it should start actually shocking them. Okay, so it's doing 22,000 when it shocks them, and that's a little bit less than what I thought, but maybe I was using something different earlier. It's possible, I'm not exactly sure. But I mean, that still is a lot of damage, and it ticks really quickly, as you can see, and I just heard me a legendary. So that's actually really cool. Right now, this Storm too is really good in the Cataclysm. And the reason why this Storm is so good in the Cataclysm is because of the buff that they currently have going right now. The buff is that whenever you kill stuff while hovering, first of all, you can hover pretty much forever. And when you kill stuff while hovering, it's going to boost the damage for people on the ground. And it works for everybody. So if I'm actually up in the air getting kills with the Storm, then everyone on the ground is actually getting a big damage buff. And if I want to get that damage buff, I need to actually go ahead and just hop down to the ground. Now, where was that legendary at? I heard it, but I do not currently see it. Okay, there it is. Let me go and grab that real quick. Thank you very much. But yeah, guys, I mean, this weapon is so busted. I mean, yes, they are 100% going to eventually fix this. BioWare is pretty slow about patching stuff, so this is probably going to last for at least a little while, so have fun with it while you can. Alrighty guys, well that's going to do it for this video. I really hope that you have enjoyed it and that this has helped. If it has, will you please like the video for me and be sure to subscribe and click the bell so that you can stay notified. If you don't click the bell, you don't get any notifications. It's pretty dumb in my opinion. Subscribing means nothing. I really do hope that everyone has a very nice day and peace out.